Business owners, CEOs, and other members of the executive management teams, as well as managers and even employees, face challenges with crafting business messages to other people. Hello, my name is Jorma. I am the founder and managing director of Business Made Agile Company Limited. Today, we are talking about mastering the structural patterns of messages. Crafting a business message requires a strategic understanding of its core components, which are structure, style, and stickiness. This presentation is focused on the structural patterns of business messages. The three structural patterns of messages are direct pattern. The main point or ask is presented at the beginning of a message, followed by necessary details and a concluding call to action. This is the most common structural pattern used for most of the business messages crafted by anyone. The second structural pattern is called circuitous pattern or indirect pattern, if you like. This pattern delays the main point, leading the reader through a series of introductory statements or justifications before revealing the core message. The third one is called semi-circuitous pattern. As the name suggests, this is a hybrid approach. It may begin with a brief, engaging opening to build rapport before quickly moving to the main point. The structural pattern is selected for a message based on the type of message and the direction of communication. The direction of communication affects the structural pattern selected for different types of messages. Upward or bottom-up communication involves information and feedback flowing from lower level employees to higher level management, while downward top-down communication refers to information flowing from management to employees. Upward communication allows employees to share thoughts, concerns, and suggestions with management, while downward communication is often used by management to provide instructions or share updates with employees and suppliers, for example. Downward communication, by definition, is information and instructions from upper management to lower level employees. The purpose of downward communication is for management to provide employees with directives, policies, and organizational updates. A few examples are job instructions, company announcements, training materials, and performance evaluations. On the other hand, upward communication by definition is information and feedback from lower level employees to upper management. The purpose of upward communication is to allow employees to share their perspectives, concerns, and suggestions with management. A few examples are employee satisfaction surveys, suggestion boxes, performance reports, and open door policies. There are some cultural considerations which may affect the structural pattern that you select for your business messages. Firstly, there are cultural variations. Some cultures may prioritize information sharing, while others might emphasize the importance of trust and mutual understanding. In Western cultures, people may favor direct and clear communication, providing detailed instructions and expectations. However, in Eastern cultures, people might emphasize indirect communication, leaving room for interpretation and respecting the authority of superiors. Some of the key considerations are: consider the appropriate level of formality, the preferred methods of communication, and the level of detail needed when delivering downward communication. There are also cultural considerations for upwards communication. There are cultural variations. Some cultures may emphasize formal channels for upward communication, while others might encourage more informal feedback loops. In Western cultures, people often value open communication and encourage employees to voice their opinions and concerns, even to the top management. However, in Eastern cultures, people may be more cautious and hierarchical, with employees potentially being more hesitant to directly challenge or question their superiors. The key considerations are: consider the level of formality expected, the preferred methods of communication, and the appropriate level of directness when sharing information upwards. There are 9 types of messages that business people have to craft every now and then. Positive messages utilize the direct structural pattern for both downwards and upwards communication. Positive persuasive messages like sales letters, for example, utilize the direct structural pattern for both downwards and upwards communication. Non-sensitive messages utilize also the direct structural pattern for both downwards and upwards communications. Then when we move to negative messages, they use also the direct structural pattern for downwards communication. And the same applies to internal negative persuasive messages. They utilize semi-circuitous structural pattern for downwards communication. And then we move to upwards communication. Internal negative messages utilize the semi-circuitous structural pattern for upwards communication. And the same applies for internal negative persuasive messages. They utilize the semi-circuitous structural pattern for upwards communication. External negative messages utilize the circuitous structural pattern for upwards communication. And same applies to external negative persuasive messages that utilize the circuitous structural pattern for upwards communication. As a conclusion, the direct structural pattern works best for positive persuasive, and non-sensitive messages, as well as negative messages. The circuitous pattern or indirect pattern works best for external negative and external negative persuasive messages. And finally, the semi-circuitous pattern works best for internal negative and internal negative persuasive messages, as well as for external negative and external negative persuasive messages. I recommend to consider the type of message and the direction of communication before you select the structural pattern for the message. And don't forget to consider the cultural differences too. My name is Jorma Manninen, and I am the founder and managing director of Business Made Agile Company Limited. I've studied engineering at the Helsinki University of Technology and business administration and communications at the Aalto University in Helsinki. I graduated in 2014 and have an executive MBA degree. I've been communicating as the chairman of the board, chief executive officer, chief marketing officer, program and project manager, and business unit manager, as well as an employee for the past 30 years. I've been crafting all kinds of business messages during my career before artificial intelligence. And during the past 2 years, I've learned how to use AI for crafting or creating business messages. Thank you for your time, and I'm looking forward to seeing you in the next video.